I wish I had that lesson early on in life. I fell into the let's make more money trap, and I almost lose my family because of that. I came from a corporate environment where, because I was a leader, like a senior leader in Fortune 500 companies, it takes a lot of time too. So plus commuting time. So I was doing probably 10 hours, 11 hours a day. So one of the reasons why I opened my own business was to manage my time better and have more family time. But at the beginning, I was so scared that I did even more than that. And the problem is that I did it for long enough time that I got used to it. So, I got used to working 12, 13 hours a day, don't stop on the weekends. And then I missed my kids' soccer games. I missed the recitals, like that stuff I will never get back. Welcome to the Break Free Podcast. I am your host, David Mancilla. Today we have with us two entrepreneurs that are actually sisters, but they run their own separate businesses, and both of them are making a great impact in our organizations and in our society. So I'm excited. This is the first time I'm going to have two guests at the same time in the podcast, and I think it's going to be incredible. So welcome to the show, Beth and Emily. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks for having us, David.
Yeah, we're great.
So, who was the first entrepreneur among the two of you?
Beth was, because she's older.
I was going to say, I think we've both been sort of entrepreneurs from the time we were born, and I'm a couple of years older, so I guess I'm the first one.
Wow, that's incredible. So, let's start with you, Beth. Did you ever had a job in your life, or you jumped right into business since after the school?
I did. So I had my first job out of school. I was working at someone else's smaller company. And then I worked for a larger financial institution before I was an entrepreneur again as an adult.
Wonderful. So what business are you in then?
So I'm in the wealth management space. I have a financial planning practice that has a niche in working with women who are going through divorce.
Wonderful. Well, isn't that necessary? Nowadays, it's very popular to be in a transition like that.
Yeah.
How about you, Emily?
Yeah, I feel like growing up in an entrepreneurial family and my dad having his own business that we were always working. I remember at a very young age, he would pay us, $10 an hour to go in and stuff envelopes. And we would go in every day after school and stuff envelopes. And so I think at a young age, we were working, just kind of was built into us. My dad grew up on a farm, and I feel like that him working as a child on the farm definitely kind of instilled us that work ethic as well. So I worked basically my whole life. But after college, I went to Goldman Sachs in New York, and I was doing investment banking there. And it wasn't until I was actually in Sydney, Australia, I was supposed to go to Hong Kong, and I realized that there can be a better way of life. There was a part where I feel like I was working all the time, and the people who I still admire, I have a lot of respect for people at Goldman, but I didn't want that life. And so I was later to the entrepreneurial world than Beth was, although I feel like Goldman allowed us to be very entrepreneurial inside of the organization. But Beth definitely beat me to that, but I'm glad that I'm here doing my own thing as well, which is exciting.
What business are you in?
I have a company called the Medicare Coach. So what a CPA is to taxes, we are to Medicare. And so Americans hire us to help navigate the government rules and also navigate all of the insurance company confusion to ultimately help them protect their healthcare rights as well as their financial savings.
Now, so do you do that with individuals or with businesses, or both?
A little of both. We're mainly helping individuals, but companies will hire us to come in and help their employees understand how Medicare works and understand the options that they have.
That's wonderful. So this is a great example of living life on your own terms. The podcast is called Break Free because of that. I was actually in corporate for over 10 years before I decided to start my own business too. And as you guys, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So my dad had 7 businesses before he passed away, and we are 5 siblings, and all of us have our own businesses. Some of our siblings started their business right after college, like my older brother. But the rest of us, we were in jobs before. And breaking out of that cycle was hard. For me, it was very hard. I grew up in the corporate ladder, and the higher you go up, the better your salary, the more respect you get a position of power, the corner office, the vacations paid, and all that. So those golden handcuffs were very hard for me to break. So this question is for Beth. Beth, since you were on corporate for a long time too, what was that transition for you like when you started to run your own business?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talking about how challenging it was to break free. I think I was so relieved to break free from it. So it was an exciting time. I think part of it, and I don't know, David, if you had felt the same way, but because really Emily and I were entrepreneurs, working in corporate America always felt very temporary to me. I knew, so while I was there, I never became very attached to it because I saw it as a phase in my career that was going to just provide me with more tools and knowledge to be able to go out and run my own business. But I would say, the biggest thing about being an entrepreneur, like you said, the paycheck goes away. So fortunately, I had a great husband with a steady paycheck when I walked away from my paycheck, because that was definitely the hardest part, was the income change for the first few years. So I would say that was the main struggle, was just really trusting and believing in myself and knowing that I could walk away from a paycheck and that it would come back and pay back at some point, and it did.
Wonderful. How about you, Emily? Goldman Sachs and investment banking, that implies a lot of wealth around you all the time, right?
Yeah, but I think Beth made a good point. It was never that was not the long-term plan. Mm-hmm. I wanted to go to New York. I had goals. I wanted to do things, and Goldman was a great place to do that. But again, I think that we grew up with a dad who showed us another way. He was able to make a really good living while also being there for all of our sports activities, or, we spent the weekends going to the farm every Saturday. And I knew that I wanted a different life than what a big corporation provided. And so I think, to Beth's point, it was definitely a temporary role. Now, I think the thing I sometimes did miss about corporate America, and sometimes do miss, is you can just sometimes just show up and get paid. and that's not the case here, right? Like,
go through the motions. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, man, just pay me to show up. And look, at Goldman, I was never doing that, right? But I think there's pros and cons. I also feel like sometimes corporate America has a false sense of security. I think we're seeing that right now with layoffs. So I think wherever you are, there's challenges and there's also opportunities. But I'm very grateful that I'm on this side of the world, of the business opportunities as well. But there's challenges wherever you go. There's nice things, and there's a little of everything. You just choose which one you want. And although sometimes it'd be great to go back to corporate America, it lasts for about 2 seconds, and I'm like, no, thank you.
Well, I was so freaked out when I resigned from my last job, because I went from a very high-end, over 6-figure salary to nothing, and that was crazy. And like you, Beth, I talked to my wife, and she actually had a good job at the time. So we did the math, and we could pay the mortgage and food. So I could barely survive on her salary, because we were a family of 5. And so she told me, you got 5 years. If you don't retire me in 5 years, you're back to work. I'm like, fair enough. And exactly on year 4, I asked her to come work for me, and she did. And she was working full time for a while. And then all of a sudden, she would show up 4 days a week. And then she would show up 3 days a week. And before you know, her desk was full of dust because she never came back.
That's great.
But it was beautiful, because she always kept working for the business. She just started working from home and taking care of our investments. And we have a real estate portfolio that she manages now. But she took a chance on me, and hopefully, gratefully, it actually turned out great. Fantastic for both of us. So.
And would you ever go back?
So that's a good question. I'm trying to live my life every day now, trying to serve God. I I follow the Christian faith. I'm Christian, and especially the last year has been so turmoil for me that I went back to the Bible, went back to trying to praise the Lord and ask for His will. So if you would ask me that question last year, I would have said, no way. But if you ask me now, I can tell you, if it's the Lord's will for me to get a job, I will get a job for sure. It's not my best option though. And you know what's funny? When I started my own business, my fallback plan was always, I can always get a job. And, I remember putting my, I was a master at getting jobs when I was in corporate. Every 2 years, I would change jobs and double my salary. Like, that's how I moved up so fast in the corporate world. And especially because I was a computer scientist, it was a lot easier for me. Plus, I was a leader and a computer scientist, so both really high required skills. So I remember I never took off my resume from the, job posting sites, and I would get 4 or 5 people asking me if I wanted to go work for them every week. And that gave me a peace of mind where if my business didn't prosper, I could always get a job. Now, the worst thing that could happen to me is go get a job.
In our family, we say that we're all unemployable at this point, mainly just because if you haven't had a boss for so long, and I think getting used to the freedoms that come with being an entrepreneur, it would be very difficult to go back at this time. But
yeah, I've been on my own for 18 years now.
Yeah.
And it's been such a ride. And now I have this amazing freedom that I finally found, where I can actually get to do podcast all day if I want to, right? And I have people delegated in all the businesses that I run. We run about 7 family businesses all together. And so we have been blessed incredibly, where we can actually decide what to do with our time. Isn't that wonderful? That's the payoff for being an entrepreneur. But it took me forever though, more than 10 years of hard work.
It's
right?
That balance, right? And I think that's the other thing. While corporate is not really 9 to 5, but it's a bit more structured. But an entrepreneur, it's much more fluid, right? And we can choose when we work, when we don't. We could be working 24 hours a day, or we could be not. I think it's finding that balance too, of like what fits for you. And I think everyone's different. I mean, Beth has 3 kids, so I feel like her life's crazy, and I feel like Beth, you balance it really well. I just had a baby; he's 7 months, so I'm doing it differently. But it's neat to be able to see it fit your life. Because I mean, right now I'm up in the mountains. We went hiking this morning, right? And I couldn't do that with a corporate job. Now with that, I'm working tonight and I'm doing other things. But it's finding that balance too that works.
Yeah,
it allows you to prioritize things while still serving others.
For sure. Beth, how do you manage that with 3 kids and your own business? How do you pull that off?
Well, I'm not going to say that it is ever perfect, right? It is a work in progress on a regular basis. As I had mentioned early in our marriage, my husband was the steady income earner, and I had, quit my job to be an entrepreneur. Now my husband has stayed at home with the kids for about 5 years. So he stays at home with the kids and I work. But I think that at this point where I'm at right now, and my oldest is going to be 13 next week, so I've been a mother for about 13 years, but where I am at in my career and in my motherhood is that I say no to a lot of opportunities. I say no to really large clients sometimes. I say no to, leadership or board positions that are offered to me because every time I feel like I say yes to something, I'm in some way saying no to my family. And so right now, my big, my business is going so well. It's at a very manageable point. My goal this year has been to only work 6 or 7 hours a day and I don't work on the weekends. I still take a fair amount of days off work, period. But on the days where I work, I only work 6 to 7 hours a day. And I am not willing to sacrifice an increase of income that would jeopardize a lower stress work environment that allows me to be present as a mother in the way that I want to be.
I wish I had that lesson early on in life. I fell into the let's make more money trap, and I almost lose my family because of that. I came from a corporate environment where because I was a leader, like a senior leader in Fortune 500 companies, it takes a lot of time too. So plus commuting time. So I was doing probably 10 hours, 11 hours a day. So one of the reasons why I opened my own business was to manage my time better and have more family time. But at the beginning, I was so scared that I did even more than that. And the problem is that I did it for long enough time that I got used to it. So, I got used to working 12, 13 hours a day, don't stop on the weekends. And then I missed my kids' soccer games. I missed the recitals, like that stuff I will never get back. So it was always my wife there, and I would probably did 10% of those events. And now I'm like, money will never replace those memories.
David, it was interesting because when I had left Northern Trust, the financial institution that I was at, and I was starting my business, and my dad was in town, and we were looking at my calendar for the year, and he's like, okay, so how many days are you going to take off this year? And I'm like, I don't know. I had like 20 paid vacation days when I was at Northern Trust. Maybe I'll do about the same. And he looked at me and he said, Beth, why would you take on the risk of being an entrepreneur and not enjoy the freedoms that it has to offer? And so as you were talking about that, like, we take on lots of risk as entrepreneurs, and we better darn well enjoy the benefits that come with it. So, Emily, how do you find some of that balance? And I've been very, very proud of you, how you've drawn some boundaries with having your new little baby.
It's full on chaos. I'm like the duck, trying to like glide on the water so smoothly, and underneath I'm like frantically trying to figure out what the heck's going on. But then my goal is to work 3 days a week. So I work Tuesday, Wednesdays, Fridays, and I also work Monday evenings when I have a client event then. So it's a pretty decent balance where I can still have time to be with my son during the day. And so that's been nice. And this won't last forever, but I think at least the first few years, I think the goal is to get to at least 2 of us doing this. But I think what I found, and right now I'm reading that book, 10X is easier than 2X. And I think it makes a good point of, I can fill my day with just stuff. I can fill my day with whatever. But if you think about it, there's only a few things that are really important. And by going to 3 days a week, I've had to really force myself of what is important and getting rid of the fluff. And so, we're growing this year, not as fast as I'd like to. We're bigger than we were last year. So we're growing when I'm only working 3 days a week. So it's like, well, why would I go back to 5 days a week? Right. And by me being out of there allows my team, I feel like, to grow as well. And so I don't know. I honestly, I'm still a hot mess over here. I think that I'd like to have more balance. I don't think that exists. But again, with Jack being 7 months old, I'm okay with it being a little less predictable, a little less stable than it has in the past. Or I could work all the time, and I don't want to work all the time now. And so it's a balance. That's not an equal balance, but it's a balance.
And you mentioned something very interesting, Emily. Now that you're saying 10X is easier than 2X, you said that if you show up at your job, you will get paid, and you're actually accurate. A couple of years ago, I saw a statistic that said that if corporate American employees work 33% of their day, they will never get fired. 33% of their day. And the worst part is that the statistics said that more than half of the employees only work 33% a day. If you work 50% of your day, you start getting promoted. Think about that. And it's true because, there is, when I learned, have you learned about the Pareto law?
I don't think so.
So this dude, Pareto, he was a farmer in Italy. And he realized that a quarter of his land produced 80% of all the harvest. And then he started to realize that the same rule started to apply to everything he noticed. For example, like the busiest roads carried 80% of the traffic. So then he realized that it's a pattern. So it's a universal law, like the law of gravity. It's called the 80-20 rule. He is the Pareto law. That's why we call it the Pareto law, because he discovered it. It's something that we discovered. It's not nothing that we invented. So I did, I got so bad in my job-life balance with my own business that I got a heart attack in 2011. That's how hard I started working myself. So God sent me that condition to wake up and realize that I was doing something wrong. I wish I knew, Dan Sullivan before. He's the one that taught me how to relax and enjoy more free days, right? But I read the book 3-4 times, and from 2011 to 2013, I completely changed my life. But I went to the opposite, and I maximized that everywhere. For example, I was working out 5 times a week. And then I realized that if I went down to 2 times a week, I could get better results. So in my work, it was crazy. I overdid it because I was working 1 day a week. And I was fine. I was growing 15% per year. Everybody was happy. I was taking my kids out of school and traveling the world every winter. So I actually did recover that time that I lost, but when they were little. Now they were teenagers, and it's not the same, But it is true. And as entrepreneurs, we get the luxury to live and to apply that rule in life, like you guys are doing. But if you're an employee, you're still expected to be there 8 to 5 or 9 to 5, right? Even if you're just warming your chair.
And I think, and I don't know about both of you, but sometimes I feel a little guilty that I'm not there all of the 9 to 5s. I'm like, I should be, like, I want to work right alongside everyone else. Like, I respect them. I want to work alongside of them. But to everyone's points, we do have a different role. We have different responsibilities. We have different risk. We have to be fed differently. We have to be relaxed differently, because we're expected to show up in a different way. I think it's another challenge as an entrepreneur to be like, no, it's okay. Like, this is part of it, right? It's Dan Sullivan. I love how he structures it in terms of, the free days, because it is so important to kind of have those part of it. Otherwise, it doesn't work,
Beth, when did you discover this truth? When did you discover? Well, I know you told me your dad told you take more free days, but it's not easy.
And and when you say, when did you discover the truth? The truth is like an onion, right? And there's different layers to that truth, because I was going to say, in some ways, Emily and I shouldn't even say in some ways, in many, many ways, Emily and I were raised with all of these philosophies that are sort of countercultural from the time we were kids. We were raised with abundance mindset. We were raised of not work harder, but work smarter. We were raised with the thoughts that focus on what our strengths were, not on necessarily working on our weaknesses. But I would say, so again, there's different times when, there's different layers of truth. Similar to you, David, I had a pretty big health event 2 years ago, which was also sort of a wake-up call to say, I wasn't working crazy hours. I was working probably 8 to 9 hours a day, but I was working very intense hours, like not taking a breath. Like, it was a very high-paced work environment. And I was like, my body's not benefiting from this, which means that my kids aren't benefiting from this. So again, my most recent truth in this whole lesson has been similar to Emily's. It's opposite of what society will tell you. I've worked less this year and my income has gone up more than it has in previous years. It's all these weird rules that you think it's one way, but really it turns out being another way is the truth.
That's completely right. The mistake that I did before with this, knowing this Pareto law, was that I wasn't employing my free time to do good stuff, right? I mean, like the winters for sure, because we will take the kids out of school and we will travel the world and we will come school them on our vacations, like 3-4 month vacation, right? And I did some work there, but like I said, one day a week. But when I will come back, problem is that if you have too much free time and you don't invest it in something that will bless the world, then it is counterproductive. It goes against you. So that's where you have to find that balance. For example, me now, I spend my free time doing podcasts, writing books, still trying to add value. Not necessarily on my businesses, but, and doing what I love to do. But I still pay attention to those businesses for sure, right? Yeah. You guys have kids, so you already have something amazing that you need to do with your free time, right?
You do.
it is, to your point though, I think that, in corporate America, I didn't really feel like I was helping anyone, right? I mean, had colleagues, we were all like representing a company, right? We were all representing something or a fund or a something, right? And I think it is neat, especially when I see in Beth's life of who she gets to help or vice versa, right? I mean, Beth gets to help people who are either one, have been with her for a while and have like this great life, or two, people turn to her when they have another advisor who really messed up. And so I think it's cool to see the impact that we can make on people's lives to make them better, to make them happier, to make them less concerned, to provide guidance. And people look at us like, you guys aren't very old, and we're not that old. I mean, we're not young either, but it is fun, I think, to be able to help people in different ways and to see it in their families, to get the hugs, to get the cards, to get the whatever. I mean, we get to help people in this role, unlike at least my past role.
And Emily, you've told me stories of like some massive impacts that, I think of especially like your clients who have major like terminal illnesses or, things such as that. Like, what's one that sticks out to you of a big impact you all have been able to have?
Or I even think of people I wish I could have had, right? Because it's the times, it's like the what ifs. Like Beth, actually one of the lawyers in Chicago sent me one of her clients because she thought she got Medicare right, but she actually got a $40,000 bill for getting it wrong. I mean, we see people all the time who get Medicare wrong, and it drives me to try to find more and more people who we can help before it's too late, because we do help people, whether they're healthy or not healthy. I'm working with a client right now who's very well-to-do, but was very much misled by his Medicare decision that could easily wipe out his retirement savings. And so it's the things we can help, but the things we could have helped had we gotten to that person as well. So we're all trying to do that. I think all of us in our own unique ways, which is fun.
That's nice. Beth, when did you decide to become a financial advisor?
Well, I would say for sure I decided when I was out of college. So going into college, I didn't know if I wanted to be a teacher or if I wanted to be a financial advisor. So my degree is actually a middle school education. But while I was in college, I worked in a financial planning office and became licensed as a financial advisor. So it was really at the end of college where I decided to take a financial planning job instead of a teaching job at that point.
And
that is one of what
you fell in love with it, obviously.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that I love about it, but I'm not the typical stock trading, why don't I try to make you a ton of money type of financial advisor. What I like is that money can have different impacts in people's lives, and helping people make decisions that allows money to have the positive impact that they want it to have. Very rewarding.
That's wonderful. Now, Emily, for you, like Medicare advisory services from Goldman Sachs, that seems weird. How did you land that career?
It is weird. At Goldman, I was helping companies as well as the bank manage financial risk. And I have a degree in finance, and with our dad being a financial advisor, I knew that world. But I was amazed. So it was when my dad was turning 65 that he kind of introduced me to Medicare, and I was amazed at just the chaos that was happening. I mean, it was a pretty misleading industry in general, and the fact that people have spent so much of their life working for their retirement savings, have had financial advisors, have all these things, and there was a huge hole, which was Medicare, and it amazed me that no one was doing anything about it. And so a gentleman by the name of Larry created the Medicare Coach who helped us, and I found it fascinating. And so I decided to kind of go full in and really grow it big. I wanted to leave the bank eventually and do something much more entrepreneurial. And so that's kind of where I ended up. And people definitely responded to what we were offering, which is really neat as well. Because we're in all 50 states, and I think we're at 14 or 15 countries as well. And we're the biggest one doing it, it's fun to again fill a hole in the market that no one else was touching. And again, we just get to help people, which is awesome. It's fun to help people.
It's the first time I hear about that, actually, that there is actually a company that helps you manage your whole healthcare infrastructure with Medicare. It's so confusing. My sister she's a doctor in Virginia, and she's had a medical family office for a long time, and when they introduced the new Medicare Act, it was painful for a long time. Right.
It's a mess, but it is a crucial part of people's overall financial plan, which is why I love working with financial advisors. I love my finance background because we can really think about it much more holistically and not just like a insurance transaction. It's a much more holistic picture, whether you have high income or whether you're traveling or whether you want to go see Mayo Clinic or whatever else it might be. There's implications that you have to get Medicare right to the first time because it has certain rules. So anyway, I won't go into details then, but it's a path I did not expect to go down. It's not a sexy path, but I really enjoy the clients that I get to work with and make a difference in people's lives as well.
Wonderful. Turning back to you saying feeling guilty for not working 8 hours a day. Remember that?
Yeah.
Oh boy, that was the hardest for me. Because knowing that, I one of my businesses, the largest business that I have, has 60 employees. And I remember started thinking, I feel so guilty, because I was from the mentality, if they work 8-10 hours, I should work 15-16 hours a day, right? But I did that for too long. And now it's the complete opposite. What I do with my staff now is I tell them, listen, you have work to do and you have deadlines. We create projects for companies. We create software for companies. So I told them, as long as you are on time, do as you please with your time. We have software in place and we have checks and balances in place and structures that allows them to be efficient and complete their job on time. But for the most part, if you ask any of my employees, we don't know where they are during the day. If there's a meeting with a client, they will always be there. And so half my employees are female because I am one of the only companies that allows them to have complete freedom of time. So I see some of my developers, they are working at midnight because they had to take their kid to the doctors in the afternoon.
And I bet your employees stay with you as well.
Oh, my retention is amazing, right? So,
it's a win-win.
We just won the Canadian Excellence Award again for best software company in Canada. And it's that. So instead of me feeling guilty for not working all the time, I transfer that culture to my employees so they have flexibility too, right?
I love that.
I think they are better because they still have a paycheck. I'm the one that has to make sure that there is clients coming in.
Yeah. Right. We have a lot of flexibility, but to your point, we have someone has to be at the phone when the clients calls. Some people can be more flexible than others, but yeah, especially in a post-COVID world where I feel like schedules have to be more flexible in order for them to work. Mm-hmm. It's great to be able the person who gets to more or less set the rules.
Yeah, for sure. Beth, what's next for you in life? What's your next 5 years looking like?
My next 5 years is really growing further. This impact that we're having in the divorce space with women going through divorce and expanding our reach on the number of women that we're helping to make financial decisions in their life. So that's huge, but none of that can come at the cost of this working 6 to 7 hours, maximum of 7 hours a day, because my youngest son will be graduating high school in 5 years. So I do not want to miss those moments.
That's wonderful. And for you, Emily?
I think it's continuing to grow the business. Again, I want everyone to know that we exist so that we don't have anyone who made a mistake and said, I wish would have known about you years ago. And that's my goal. But to Beth's point too, while still only working not 5 days a week, probably probably closer to 3.
It's funny. I came up from a 6-week vacation. My first day was last Wednesday. And we usually once a month, we run financial analysis with my finance team. And that month is the month that we have made the most money in the whole year, the month that I didn't work. So it proves to me that they don't need me anymore, which is beautiful. I just oversee stuff and it's like, I better work less so we can make more money.
Well, in Strategic Coach too, the idea of self-managing company, but there's also more and more what I've been diving into, this idea of a self-multiplying company. And David, it sounds like you have hit the point that you have created a self-multiplying company.
Yeah, and it's a blessing. It took a while. The last thing that we had to automate was lead generation. Because of my influence, I was bringing most of the leads to the business still last year. we just had a marketing meeting a couple of months ago, and my president told me, David, you're about to be retired. Because now we're like at 90% to 10%. So within a couple of months, they're gonna be bringing 100% of the leads.
And David, is that at all scary to you?
No, it's exciting. So I can get to talk to more people like you guys.
I find that too. Every time where I hit a point where freedoms have been open, like where I'm needed less in the job that I was providing, it is scary to me for about 1 second. I'm like, okay, take a deep breath, because it's a little bit scary to say, okay, what's next? Where am I going to bring value next? But I feel like when we've gone through it time, and obviously you've been through it in an even bigger level, it probably gets scarier for me at the point where you're not even scary anymore, because you just know that there's something bigger. Like when that door closed of something that you were doing so amazing, like you're no longer needed for that door anymore. You're never needed for that. There's always a better door that opens.
Oh, for sure. And that happened to me several times in my career as an entrepreneur. When I started the company, I was the developer, the architect, the cleaner. I was the salesperson and the marketer. I was everything, right? The one guy. In 3 months, we had 4 people already. But I was still leading every project. Plus, I was in love with what I did in computer. I had 2 computer science degrees. I love the science system, doing architectural work. I remember what I used to shine was being in a boardroom with the CEO and all the C-level people and drawing their solution on a whiteboard. I will get the most satisfaction out of that. And I remember when my mentor told me, it's time for you to let that go and somebody else take over as the CTO of the company, because you are the CEO. And I did it. And that was freaking, I was freaking out. And guess what? They did a much better job than I did. So then I moved into the role of more of sales and marketing. And that's the role that I'm being replaced of. But that's why I have 6 other businesses where I'm actually on purpose. When I started those other companies, I did co-creation with other entrepreneurs so that we are partners and we do the best. So all I do is I consider myself now as a chief advisor officer, where I just give advice to all the businesses that I run. And the people, they know that I am open as long as they go through my assistant, because I don't, like you guys, I only work 6 hours a week. 6 hours a day. And I have been able to skip Fridays. That's what I did with Dan Sullivan. The first year in 2019, the first thing that I did was, okay, I'm going to stop Fridays. And that was scary, but now it's awesome. And then I said, okay, from 8 hours to 6 hours. So that's what I am right now. 4 days a week, 6 hours a day. And it's a blessing for sure.
It is. Okay, David, we can't finish this podcast without at least giving one shout out to our mom, Emily. I feel like she's she has been the amazing wife to our father, the entrepreneur, who kept us on this path too. I'm sure she's going to listen to this podcast. So anyways, Mom, we love you too.
Well, I think it goes back to David's point with his wife. I mean, this would never have been possible, right? Had your wife not supported you and not said I believe in you, you got 5 years. I think that's a really cool thing too, because it wouldn't, I think also with our spouses, right, Beth, we couldn't do this without our husbands being supportive. There's no way. And I think it's just, people always give, I think the entrepreneur the credit, but a lot of times it's the person sitting behind you that makes the whole thing a reality too.
Actually, like I mentioned before, I read the Bible more often now. And if you actually read the Bible, it is written that the wisdom is given to the women. When you hear that behind a great man, there is a greater woman, that's actually true. And you guys are an example of that. Your mom too, my wife too. Who I got for advice when I am stuck? I go to my wife. And every single time, her wisdom has set me free. Right? So now you guys in a position of power in your own businesses. Imagine that, right? But that relationship is perfect. And if it wasn't because of your mom, I'm pretty sure your dad wouldn't have the success.
David, what is your Colby, or do you know your Colby score?
7662.
Beth, what's?
I'm a 3394.
I'm about the same. And my mother is but basically our entire family's all quick starts. My poor mother is like the fact find follow through who like is chasing us all around like we're freaking crazy cats. So it's nice to have that balance and to have, just to have the different balance of people.
And both of our husbands are more fact find follow through. So my mom was very excited when she started to have in-laws bring in some diversity into the family.
Some calmness and order.
Yes.
And you know what? So for the audience, Kolbe is a psychological test that tells you what are your abilities, right? If you look at successful marriages, their Kolbes complement. If you have couples with exact same Kolbe, for sure it's going to be a divorce. It's very likely to be a divorce.
Yeah.
Right?
It is.
I would love to keep talking to you guys, but I know you're busy, entrepreneurs and moms. So I'm going to ask each one of you one last question. The second one will have the advantage of hearing the answer of the first one. So I'm going to go with seniority here because of you guys have told me so. So Beth, this question goes for you first and then it goes down to you, Emily. If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write in it?
Love. #love.
What does that mean?
I have always just been very aware of whether it's the love from God or the universe, however people want to put it, and how that flows through me and out to other people. And so I feel like love is the answer to all things.
Thank you for that. Emily?
I think mine would say life begins at the end of your comfort zone. It was one of the quotes I got a few years ago when I was trying to decide if I want to go to Hong Kong or not. And I think that a lot of times, even entrepreneurship, there's some really cool but scary things just behind our comfort zone. But if you just push through it and to have that courage, it can be really spectacular, whether it's your personal life or your professional life or your faith, whatever it is. I think it's just a really important thing to be okay being uncomfortable.
Wow. And when people get stagnant, even in business, it's because they reach a comfort zone and they never put themselves on another level where they are uncomfortable. For me, doing this podcast, for example, at the beginning was very uncomfortable. Now I've been doing it for 3 years and I'm getting comfortable. So now I opened up a new podcast that has nothing to do with entrepreneurship, right? So I look for ways to stay uncomfortable because that's how we actually move up in life.
I love that.
Thank you, David. This has been lovely.
Yeah. And so inspiring. It's so fun to see your adventure and of business and see where you've come and how you've managed it. So thank you for your inspiration as well.
No, thank you. And I know that a lot of ladies that will be listening to this will get inspired. We have to empower ladies to be more entrepreneurial. If you look at the statistics, it's very low still. And if they find the right partner in life that they can actually manage a family, it is all possible. One of my best mentors in my life, she has 3 kids, and she was my business mentor when I started out. And all her kids are grown now. They are going to university. And she runs this $100 million company, and so my point is, it is possible.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much.
Bye. This has been great. Bye.
Cheers. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
That's all for today's episode of the Break Free podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.